This is not just a city building game. This is a relationship simulator, a survival tale, a moving ecosystem, quite literally, because everything you build, every potato you harvest, every clinic you erect, every mushroom you cultivate sits atop a creature called Onbu. And Onbu moves slowly, constantly, through deserts and mountains, poison clouds and frozen valleys. And with every step, the world changes. And so must you. This creature, this colossal, gentle beast, is the heart and soul of the game. Onbu is not a map, it's not a gimmick, it's a living companion. It responds to how you treat it. Harvest its body too aggressively and it'll groan, resist, even refuse your commands. Feed it well, treat it kindly, and you'll earn its trust. That trust isn't decorative, it's functional. Without it, Onbu won't listen when you beg it to stop walking before entering a poison cloud. Without it, it might sleep in a toxic zone or ignore your horn signals to change direction at a fork in the road. But if you've built up goodwill through feeding, petting, healing, and occasionally launching villagers into its mouth via catapult for snacks, yes, that's real, Onbu becomes more than a vehicle. It becomes a partner. And that partnership is what separates the Wandering Village from every other city builder on the market. The game's world is a beautiful, haunting blend of high fantasy and soft apocalypse. Poisonous spores have ravaged the planet, forcing what remains of civilization to take desperate measures. Your people, nomadic survivors of this pandemic, stumble across Onbu and decide to make it their mobile refuge. The visuals reflect this blend of melancholy and hope. The hand-drawn art style leans into a kind of Ghibli meets eco-punk aesthetic, with warm color palettes contrasting against the cold grays of corruption and death. Zooming into the village, you'll see tiny details. Villagers tending to fields, doctors treating patients, children playing among the crops. Zoom out, and Onbu trudges through desolate landscapes that once may have been beautiful. Each biome Onbu enters brings new challenges. Deserts dehydrate your crops and limit food supply. Cold mountain regions kill heat-sensitive plants. Poison clouds force you to shut down farms and rely on stored food and clean air systems. The key to survival isn't just stockpiling, it's adaptation. If you haven't unlocked cactus farming by the time you wander into your first desert, your village may not make it. Likewise, reaching frozen terrain without proper housing and heat infrastructure can spell disaster. This means the research tree, one of the game's most important systems, becomes your lifeline. But it also introduces tough decisions. Research is slow and linear. You can't unlock everything at once. Choosing to explore culinary diversity might mean skipping out on weather-resistant crops. Investing in advanced scouting could delay toxin treatment. You're constantly weighing survival against ambition, and every choice has consequences. The game's exploration system further emphasizes this dynamic. Scavenger teams can be sent to various points of interest scattered across the map. These missions may return with food, resources, rare technologies, or new settlers. But they also require time, which means less manpower at home. Balancing the internal rhythm of village life with the outward pull of exploration becomes one of the game's central tensions. And while the map is procedurally generated, meaning no two runs are exactly alike, certain elements recur. Abandoned villages, ancient shrines, ruined cities. Each offers a small window into the world that once was, adding texture and depth to the otherwise light narrative. And about that narrative. This isn't a game with a heavy, driving plot. Instead, it tells its story through atmosphere, systems, and small moments. Occasionally, you'll stumble across a strange antenna. Through it, your people communicate with scattered survivors, eccentric figures who sometimes offer quirky quests, like retrieving a pigeon from a toxic storm or delivering medicine to a forgotten outpost. These moments are charming and unexpected, but never overstay their welcome. They serve more as narrative seasoning than a main course. Where the game truly shines is in its emotional design. There's a kind of meditative rhythm that develops once you've stabilized your village and start responding to Onbu's moods and the world's dangers with more confidence. Not just in terms of survival, but sustainability. Do you harvest Onbu's spikes for stone, knowing it will cause pain? Do you drill into its back for blood to generate biofuel? Or do you forgo these advanced technologies to preserve your bond? These aren't framed as binary moral choices. There's no good or evil meter, but the consequences are real and visible. A weakened Onbu becomes sluggish, sickly. A healthy, happy Onbu perks up, responds to your calls, and even does a little hop when you pet it. What's remarkable is how personal this relationship becomes. You start to feel protective. When a poison cloud rolls in and you scramble to deploy decontamination teams and emergency clinics, it's not just about numbers, it's about your people, your creature, and your home. This bond is the game's emotional anchor, and it's what makes even the grindier aspects feel worthwhile. Yes, resource balancing can become tedious at times. The UI, while functional, lacks some quality of life features you'd expect in a 1.0 release. Worker reassignment in particular can feel clunky, and prioritizing specific tasks remains more difficult than it should be. These flaws are noticeable, especially in the mid to late game when micromanagement ramps up. But they rarely break the experience, because the experience is more than just efficiency. It's about care, and caring is messy. The game's difficulty curve is another topic worth exploring. In early access, players often hit a wall around the 5 to 8 hour mark. Once they figured out how to survive in each biome, the challenge plateaued. The developers have addressed this in 1.0 by introducing more biome-specific hazards, randomized events, and late-game tech. Still, veterans may find that after a while, the edge wears off. The game never fully becomes a sandbox, but it does settle into a comfortable rhythm. Whether that's a strength or weakness depends on what you're looking for. If you crave constant pressure and crisis management, the Wandering Village might eventually feel too forgiving. But if you're here for the journey, the world building, and the emotional connection, it rarely disappoints. One thing that remains consistently excellent is the audio design. The soundtrack is subtle but memorable, with soft flute motifs that evoke both sorrow and serenity. Ambient sounds shift depending on the biome: dry winds in the desert, rustling leaves in the forest, muffled silence in the poison clouds. Every step Onbu takes is accompanied by deep, resonant thuds that reinforce its scale and presence. These audio cues do more than just immerse, they inform. When you hear the warning chime of a toxic spore outbreak or the distant roar of an approaching storm, you instinctively check your defenses. The sound becomes part of your strategy. By the time you reach the endgame, your village is no longer a scrappy outpost. It's a mobile civilization, complete with bakeries, wind turbines, scientific labs, and spiritual shrines. Onbu 2 is transformed, stronger, healthier, more responsive. Looking back on where you started, it's hard not to feel a swell of pride. And that's the final trick. The Wandering Village pulls off so well. It makes you care, not just about winning or surviving, but about thriving together.
It's hard to say where the Wandering Village sits in the grand pantheon of city builders. It lacks the grim narrative punch of Frostpunk, the aesthetic minimalism of Banished, or the mechanical precision of Against the Storm. This is not just a city building game. This is a relationship simulator, a survival tale, a moving ecosystem. Quite literally. Because everything you build, every potato you harvest, every clinic you erect, every mushroom you cultivate, sits atop a creature called Onbu. And Onbu moves. Slowly. Constantly. Through deserts and mountains, poison clouds and frozen valleys, and with every step, the world changes.